With the launch and expansion of amazing development tools such as GB Studio, the scene of Game Boy, homebrews, and retro-style games is truly flourishing in a way that it never has before. It's now possible, with a bit of learning and a lot of time and dedication, to create outstanding new video games that not only utilize the old technology and feel right at home, but push it to levels it wasn't thought possible. The last few years has seen wonderful new adventures created by all sorts of people, sometimes with full teams, but more often than not, a single creator, with even brand new publishing houses springing up to cater for their distribution, and in some instances, to even get these games onto physical cartridges. Retro-inspired games have been around for ages. That's not this. These don't just look like Game Boy games, they are Game Boy games, and that's the difference. It really is quite the time to be alive if you're a retro games fanatic. We're no longer stuck with the bookended libraries for long-abandoned consoles anymore. It's about time I started exploring some of them, I think, because A, new is good, and B, many of them don't get the coverage they deserve. Retro fans need to be made aware of this burgeoning scene and give it the same love they give their old games. With that in mind, the first of these that I want to show you is a wonderful Game Boy Color RPG named Dragonyhm. Now, it's not quite out at the time of recording, but we're certainly not far off. You can play a limited demo as well as get your pre-orders in, but the full game has a prospective launch date of June 29th, 2024, so a little over a week from now. A little background first off. It starts in 2020. We all know what happened then, and I don't need to go into it. However, like many others, a real estate professional called Chris Beach all of a sudden found himself with an abundance of time, and so used it to realize a long-held desire to create an RPG for the Game Boy. It beats drinking beer in your garden, don't you think? The result of that was 2021's Dragonborn, which Beach himself released under his new company, Spacebot Interactive. It's a fun game, you should definitely check it out in the meantime. Chris had the idea to recolorize and re-release the game as Dragonborn DX a while later. However, by then, with some brand new features in GB Studio opening lots of new possibilities, he decided to actually remake and vastly improve the whole thing. It's because of that we have this, Dragonyhm. It's certainly not just a prettier version of the old. Virtually everything has been overhauled. First off, it's much bigger now. The graphics are obviously way nicer, but not just because they're in color. The game mechanics have been augmented and the game world hugely expanded, making Dragonyhm feel like a much more complete experience. As with many 8-bit RPGs in their time-honored fashion, you play a young lad who is awakened by his frantic mother and told that his father is missing, and it's your job to figure out what happened to him. He's not just your father, though. He's the legendary protector and dragon slayer Curtis. Thankfully, you're not just nobody either. You're the slayer in training and not completely useless yourself. Grab your trusty spear off the wall and get adventuring. In your early investigations, you'll see that the nearby village is under attack from bandits who've used your father's absence as the perfect excuse to come out of hiding and try to take over. You'll need to beat up 4 of them to make the rest scarper, but don't feel like you need to whack them all in one go. Feel free to nip back home for a quick snooze. RPG logic, right? Once they're gone, the residents of the village will be super grateful and eager to help you find Curtis. These initial story beats are quite similar to the original Dragonborn, but fairly soon after, the two games start to diverge, with what were fairly simple quests being replaced by a much more exploration-style affair that feels much more like a proper adventure. The game itself may not reinvent the RPG wheel as such, but it takes the genre's established ideals and does them really, really well. The graphics and sound thoroughly capture the spirit of RPGs of the 8-bit era, replete with nostalgia and familiar comforts. You haven't played this game before, but it will feel like you have, and I mean that in a good way. Where it does improve, particularly over Game Boy RPGs, is in the dialogue. We've so often on this channel seen games that were translated from the original Japanese struggle with stunted text. Here, it's fully fleshed out, with each NPC being voiced in a really charming way. They're full of character, and the dialogue is legitimately funny in places. It doesn't overstate itself. You're not gonna be constantly mashing the A button to get back into the game, but when it's used well. At first, I've not yet got far enough into the game to know otherwise, you're completely on your own. However, also so far, I've only ever fought one enemy at a time, so you never feel ganged up on. That's not to say that the battles are easy, far from it. You don't have any healing spells early on and so have to rely on potions. You can find a few of these around, often in people's houses that you can of course break into and plunder. The residents usually don't care, and even when they do, they don't stop you. You are going to have to visit the shop regularly to stock up on things though. Not just potions, make sure you've got a few paralysis heals with you as well. Should you get paralyzed in battle, there's nothing you can do. No attacking, magic or anything, you can't even flee. You can only use items, and it doesn't cure itself, so you'll just have to grin and bear it while the enemy polishes you off. Fortunately, should you die, all that happens is you wake up in your bed again, so you can just carry on. You'll spot these shrines around dungeons and such. They look like small chests on a table, from where you can save your game or fully heal and replenish MP. This makes grinding much less of a chore. You still have to do it, but it's no bother really, as you can kill whatever's on a screen, leave and re-enter, heal up and just carry on. Try to stay 1 or 2 levels higher than the strongest enemies in an area if you can. You can attack with your spear or utilize magic or skills. They do largely the same thing. Magic will obviously use one of the spells you've learned, whereas skills will do something fancy with your weapon. Certain enemies have weaknesses and resistances to your different attacks. You'll have to learn and remember these. Note that your magic and your skills are fueled by individual gauges, so you don't have to sacrifice one for the other. Each spell or skill takes 1 notch from their respective gauge, and the capacity of these increase as you level up. Battles are initiated by coming into contact with the meandering enemy's attacks. Get too close to a dead man and it'll swing its sword out in a circle. Should this hit you, you don't lose HP, but you'll be taken into a fight with them. The ghoul things fire a projectile that initiate the fight should you get hit, so it's usually possible to avoid battles if you can dodge the enemies. Not always, though, so stay healed up as best you can. It's not just fighting you'll have to contend with throughout the 9 dungeons in Dragonyhm. There are some really inventive and varied puzzle sequences involving boulders, switches, floor tiles that propel you, that sort of thing. All very cool stuff. It should be evident to you by now just how much work has gone into this game, and what impresses me most is the sheer scope of it. Quite often when I've played homebrew games in the past, they feel somehow smaller or less fleshed out than their official console counterparts. That's no knock on anybody. Before, it was obviously way harder to make these, and to be compensated for your time was very unlikely. Now though, we might be on the verge of something really special. The tools are now there to create masterpieces like Dragonyhm clearly is, and they can only improve as more and more people start to use them and demand new features and such. Kickstarter projects in this vein seem to have absolutely no problem getting funded above and beyond their goals, which is wonderful to see. As such a scene starts to grow and fans and consumers start to pay more attention to it, more creators are going to be able to get their games published. Who knows where the ceiling could potentially be once publishing houses start to gear themselves towards this stuff. It's exciting times. For now, make sure you get on to Spacebot Interactive or ModRetro and get your pre-orders in if this looks at all like your thing. It's definitely mine.